Necro has been the strongest or second strongest class for the entirety of the game, in my opinion, and the skill borrowed time that has recently been added to them is absolutely overkill. Now, there's a huge debate going on among a lot of players whether they think borrowed time is good or borrowed time is bad, and this happens at all different resonance. There's high resonance players that say it's good, high resonance players that say it's bad, low resonance players that say it's good, low resonance players that say it's bad, and so forth. So it's not just like high resonance all saying it's good, low resonance all saying it's bad. This is really just being debated at all levels. So let's take a look at this build. Now, I'm set up for a high resonance build or loadout, but this build has some flexibility to work for all resonance levels by swapping some skills for a little bit more CC as well as your set. What I'm using is Wraith Form, Borrowed Time, Bone Armor, Corpse Lance, and Soulfire with 6-piece Banquet. Now, you can swap some skills like I mentioned. I won't go super in depth about that. This video is more to show why Borrowed Time is overpowered, as you've seen from the gameplay. What I want to mention here is that with the 6-piece Banquet, that's going to allow me to do more damage, and some of the essences are going to kind of also proc the Banquet set. And with 2-piece Vithus, 4-piece Mount Pack, you're a lot more tankier, your Wraith Form duration is longer, and it's more of a focus of being invulnerable through the Wraith Form or avoiding damage using that, and so forth for periods of time. So let's look at the essences themselves. For this particular loadout, we're going to use the Studied Menace, and that's going to give the decay or damage over time component. However, if you're going the lower resonance build, Emperor of Worms is really effective, especially if you're running mount packs. This causes you to have 4 lances immobilize a target for a really long duration. Even after Strife, this is a long duration. You could also run this with something like Barons and go into kind of an extended CC type build. However, if you're low resonance, you might not have enough potency to offset the target's resistance, and Barons might not get as much benefit as you may really wish in that case. So all this is kind of subject to the individual that's playing and the character and so forth. But this is my choice for the mount back build, and that just adds to the survivability. I often will just immobilize players and then just walk away from them or Wraith Form once they're out of it and so forth. For shoulders, we're going to run Gravedirt's Weight, and this is going to give us immunity to knockbacks. And since we have Bone Armor in there, that makes this very valuable. If we don't run Bone Armor in this build, and there are some versions that do, there isn't actually a shoulder essence. Now, I don't run Bone Armor just so that I can have all essences used. I run Bone Armor because I actually think it adds tremendously to the value of this build. 1, it adds to your survivability from just having the Absorb Shield, and 2, it allows you to run Nettled, okay? Nettled is one of the curses that you can run, and it is super strong in my opinion. Anytime you shield, and there's a high uptime on the shield, means you basically can have the ability to proc that, and anytime you come back, and even as a Necro, if you're staying alive through Borrowed Time, you're going to get a lot of Nettled procs, so you get a lot of value out of that. For chest, we're going to run Gallowsborn, and this is obviously, if we're running Corpse Lance, this is how we're going to generate the corpses to use other than killing players and so forth. For pants, we're actually running Proximal Fear. Now, I have gone to Rosin's Keenings for periods of time, and that gives you more Corpse Lance damage. However, I don't really find it necessary with this build. Proximal Fear, for the extra CC it adds, is very big here. And the reason for that is you can Wraith Form from a really long distance away, get into the objective, fear targets while you're there, get some skills off, get hit, have the Borrowed Time proc, and often Wraith Form again, re-CCing all of those players. Just makes it incredibly strong, and you can kind of chain abilities by yourself and not necessarily even need follow-up from other teammates at times. Now, if you're completely overwhelmed, it can be more difficult, but a lot of times you can still get a Wraith Form off, even with several players on you. For weapons, we're going to run 2 that are actually going to affect Wraith Form here. And again, we're just using Wraith Form so frequently that these become strong because we're just always going into Wraith Form almost whenever possible. Revenant Wind, and this is going to deal a damage over time component. Again, proccing that Banquet. This loses a lot of its benefit if you're running Vithus and Mount Back sets. However, it still has a movement speed reduction, so it still has some value there. And aside from this, there isn't another great choice. So I do still run this with the Mount Back version, essentially for that speed reduction. Now, Stroke of Midnight. Absolutely enormous essence for players of all resonance. The value that it has for lower resonance players is decreased, and you should be really aware of that. It's decreased if you're in a match where you're playing up against stronger players, because you can get up to 1.5 seconds cooldown reduction each time you are hit. Now, that counts if you're hit with your Bone Armor shield, so you need to be able to take a few hits to refresh this cooldown essentially. It also gives you additional cooldown reduction, and overall this just allows you to have a super high uptime on your Wraith Form. If you run Vithus with this, you can almost be in Wraith Form like whenever you want, basically. It's not 100%, but you can essentially just Wraith Form all the time and really keeps you alive and adds a ton of survivability. Now, the way you engage as a lower resonance player will be different. You'll essentially wraith form in, try to fear targets, and get out, right? Or you'll hit them with something like Pillar and kind of back away. You don't want to stay there and take hits like you might if you were a higher resonance player to kind of soak some of the damage or be part of the front line. But this will allow you very high uptime, and if you get hit by a few things on the way out, you'll then be able to wraith form again if somebody comes to dash or dive you. So this still has benefit for lower resonance players, not quite as much as it does for high resonance players, but still definitely my preferred choice for both loadouts in terms of sets, as well as regardless of your resonance rating. For shields, we're going to run 2 shields here that are both going to benefit Soulfire. One is going to be the Baleful Trinity. This is going to bounce to an additional target and just give us a little bit more AoE splash damage. I'm usually a fan of AoE damage on our primary. I also really like Electrocute on Wizard just because it kind of chains around, hits everything, makes things a little easier in my opinion. And then the second one we're going to run is going to be Spitefetter, and this is going to give our Soulfire a 25% chance to burn enemies. Again, proccing that Banquet, and again, it goes without saying that if you aren't playing the Banquet set here, it will have some reduced benefit, but it's still probably the better choice even if you aren't, just giving you some additional damage, even for that other build with say, Vithus and Mountback equipped. Now, if you look at this 25% chance, when paired with the extra, or the guaranteed additional target here, it kind of makes up for it, right? It deals 30% decreased damage, but after we hit 4 targets, there's a likely chance that we're going to get an additional proc there. So it kind of balances out in itself, in my opinion, and then just having the ability to spread that Banquet set really makes up for it overall. So I feel that the trade-off there is definitely more benefit, which is why I run the 2. And then obviously you get the Essence Mastery effects, the 9% damage, as well as another 9% damage. So it just kind of overall is more benefit than a negative in my opinion, even if you're going after a single target. So I'd like to clarify that as well. So as you saw from the gameplay, build super strong. It works for all resonance. You can tweak some things up. You can run Pillar instead of Corpse Lance. Number of things you can do. You can still utilize Knock Up if you want with Bone Spikes and run essences in that manner. A lot of options here, and honestly it would take too long to go through them all, but as always, feel free to leave comments if you have anything you're wondering whether or not you can swap it in, or if something will work for you depending on your resonance level and so forth. Enjoy. Right, we have a very interesting match today, and that's because the enemy team has 6 melee, including a pretty solid front line with 3 barbs and a Crusader, and our team has no melee. We don't even have a monk. So this is going to be very interesting whether we can actually stop them from progressing, and it means that I myself, as being a higher resonance player, am going to have to be fairly aggressive and actually getting into the objective. It's difficult for all of my teammates to get into the objective because they can't sustain as much damage or take as many hits, so I'm going to have to kind of be the one pushing forward there. I thought that was going to make a really good example of how to use and showcase this Necromancer Borrowed Time skill. And in fact, now that the idle timer is ticking for phase 2, I'm just going to go in and be super aggressive. Now, I've activated my stance change already. That's going to just give me additional attack speed, and I'm doing that so that I have a faster cast time. If I can get any ability off here, it's going to be beneficial. There's the Borrowed Time proc. If I can get another Wraith form, it's huge. I do not, but I still have 6 players of the enemy team on me, and I'm still going here. Now, I certainly won't make it out at this point. I just can't do anything but get CC'd, but I manage a kill, and look how much time has come off of the duration so far. And that's all we can really do here, and that's where you see the benefit of Borrowed Time. It's very similar to Undying Rage from Barbs, except for Undying Rage with Barbs during the proc, you can continue to kind of damage and move. With Borrowed Time, however, you can't do anything, but what you can do is just occupy them. We had 6 players of the team just continuing to sit there, right? And that's an enormous advantage, especially when we're on defense and going to try to stall the timer here most likely. Going to get locked up again. In fact, their entire team is probably just going to focus me whenever they see me. So again, I'm getting into the objective here because nobody on my team is going to do it in this match, okay? There may be people who periodically go in, but for the most part, this is going to be up to me to dive into the objective on either side as often as possible. Now, I have 9 seconds on my Borrowed Time, so in this case, I'm actually going to retreat a little bit and try to get up to the health club here, and this way this cooldown is coming back. I can even top myself off. Now I'm going to Wraith form in with the Borrowed Time back up, and immediately I will pop my Bone Armor, get 1 Corpse Lance off, popping Bone Armor because I know they're just going to come for me here, and immediately I'm swarmed, right? But again, nobody else in the team is going to be doing this, so I have to be getting in the objective, and that means that I can get a ton of value out of this Borrowed Time. Try to get on the back line there with the individuals kind of retreating. Now I've got bone armor up as well as the borrowed time cooldown. So here I am just stalling that objective even though I'm down myself. And in this case, with the enemy team starting to get cleared out, I'm going to retreat a little bit just to get a bandage, see if I can get my timer. Oh, that's unfortunate. My borrowed time did not reset even though some enemy players went down. So I need to somehow manage to stay alive for a few seconds here. There's a wizard invisible there, so I'm using the Wraith form just because I was getting hit by the Arcane Torrent. Unfortunately, I do go down, but you can see how little that objective has moved. Now, the other side is moving as well, because like I said, pretty much nobody is going to get in there. In this case, I want to reinforce my team, try to clear this out, and then we can go over as a unit. Don't need to worry about anyone on the enemy team running beyond the idol. I just want to get in and stall it. Need to use my dash from the stance there, and I'm able to avoid that Barbarian's entrapment. Not going to really matter, but it will stall the objective a little bit longer, so a few extra seconds. And again, I'm just getting chain CC'd and just focus fired by every player that sees me, but that's just the way it goes, and honestly, that's the best tactic for the enemy team, in my opinion, as well. Need my team to either get some kills, or somebody needs to start getting in the idol and stopping it as well. Not sure if we will kind of get either, and I don't think that's anybody's fault. It's just really the way the matchmaking has been lately, in terms of just kind of how diverse the matches are from high resonance players and low resonance players, and then also just the class balance, right? We have no melee on our entire side, which is just absolutely brutal when we face 6 melee that are going to constantly be pushing. I managed to get a small tick on my bandage there, and I'm doing that just to kind of help keep myself alive because I'm ticking from that borrowed time. This Crusader is not shielded. We can actually take them down. So here we'll get a cheat death proc, which means that my borrowed time will most likely refresh if I'm able to kind of get a shield up or anything of that nature. So at this point I can bandage. The other side does manage to get stopped, which is great. I need to immediately Wraith form because surely the enemy monk is going to get on me here. Here's the borrowed time, so if I can manage a kill ideally on this Barb, who's going to have that Undying Rage wear off shortly, and that will manage me to at least stop ticking for some damage. There's a cheat death, and I'm going to follow up that cheat death of the monk with some damage of my own to help my team kind of stall it. The left side is actually going down here, so I'm going to... Now they're actually reinforcing this side, so I'll stay. I was going to rotate, but here I'll go in, try to get this Crusader as the shield wears off there. Just a regular shield, not the Conjuration of Light. Now I can get in with a Fear, and I'm just sitting in this objective, right? I have been in the objective almost for the entirety of this match, right? And that is all I really need to do, and that is essentially what my role is for this. Here's a borrowed time. Hopefully finish off a player. There we go. That'll stop the tick. Other side still pushing. I need my entire team basically to stall that side, and we have another minute and 40 seconds to go here. I'm not sure we're going to make it. This is going to be an incredibly close game, if I had to guess, where one push or one stop on our side will just make a huge difference. But keep in mind how much value I have gotten from this borrowed time. In fact, it is essentially giving us the opportunity to win this match. If I had not been utilizing this skill and had something else on my loadout, I'm pretty sure we would have already lost. I'm going to go over and help this side. And ideally, I want to Wraith form in. And then I'm just going to camp up there, right? That is basically my strategy. I'm going to dash just to try to dodge the Monk's dash, which looks like they teleported from Fists of Thunder. Just throwing some damage as well, getting them to retreat. Wraith forming myself just to avoid the Corpse Lance. And now that they're retreating, I'm going to go back over and help this side. Pop my shield just because there's players that see me. And again, just camp up, right? This is the most benefit we can offer to our team, and it is to just repeatedly be the one in the objective. It would be very interesting to go back and see how long I spent in this objective compared to any of the other players that were on the screen. However, I'm not sure I have the time or the patience to do that, but I guarantee you that it is very substantial as well as significant. I really need to get over to the other side at this point, just to help my team out. I also need to avoid dying. Looks like we may get the timer here, so I can kind of stay where I am. Very, very close match. And like I said, I absolutely feel that we would not have won this match had I not been utilizing the borrow time skill and had I not been willing to get into the objective and essentially be a tank as a Necro. Now, I am utilizing a 6-piece banquet set. However, excuse me, I have 6-piece banquet on. However, this build also works very effectively with 2-piece Vithus and 4-piece mount bank. And that just adds to your tankiness. Your ability to kill enemy players will go down even more. Now, this is clearly not the most amount of kills I've ever had. I've had well over 30 kills as many games as a Necro. However, what I needed my role to be in this match was to sit in the objective and just soak damage, right? And I think I did that fairly well. And in my opinion, I gave the victory to my team and aided them the best that I could. And had I not been utilizing that role or even using the borrow time skill, you would not have seen the outcome that we had. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch and have a great day.